Hi there, welcome to SimUK. Today I'm going to review the EDTracker Pro for the second time, except this time it's a wireless EDTracker Pro. Finally guys, I have got my hands on an EDTracker Pro wireless device. This is going to be a brief and to the point review. I won't be including a like-for-like comparison with the wired device, but I will instead focus on the performance and capability of the Wireless Pro in its entirety. Now, apologies for my voice today. I'm a little bit under the weather, and also the family are here, so there's a lot of noise in the background. I apologise. There's nothing I can do about that. If you've seen my previous EDTracker Pro device review, then you will know that this is something I was really looking forward to getting my hands on, and genuinely was one of the only real negative things or things missing from the original EDTracker Pro was this wireless capability. So the EDTracker Pro Wireless Edition has only been available to purchase for a short while now, and as such there are a number of legal obligations that EDTracker must adhere to before the EDTracker Pro Wireless Edition can be legally sold in your specific country. A note to Canadian customers from EDTracker Pro is that they're waiting on certification at this point in time. They cannot sell the wireless model to Canada. So they ask you not to submit orders for the EDTracker Pro Wireless if you are in Canada. If you do, you will be charged, but your order will be put on hold until they can legally fulfill it, or until it's cancelled and refunded to you. Good news though, at the point of recording this, in the USA, orders are now okay. They have their official FCC certification. So I'm recording this August 2017. My advice to you would be to check on the website and maybe contact EDTracker directly to see if and when the EDTracker Pro wireless device is going to be available in your specific area. Now, the wireless version of the Pro does cost more than the default wired equivalent, and it will cost you an additional £25, give or take. And at this time, there is no link that I can see which will allow you to build your own, which was a unique feature of the Pro wired version. In fact, that is where EDTracker started entirely. Before the EDTracker Pro, there was just an EDTracker build-it-yourself option. Also, there are not any options to buy the necessary components at a lower price and then construct them by yourself. If I'm being honest, I doubt this will ever materialize due to the greater level of technical knowledge required to make this work. So let's just go ahead and unbox and see what we get as part of the wireless version. So the wireless version is almost identical to the wired equivalent, but for a few minor differences. You could easily confuse the two. Once again, the protective custom-built packaging prioritizes functionality over looks, but let's be perfectly honest, once it's out of the box, it's unlikely to go back in it again. Obviously, instead of the high-quality cable, the wireless variant comes with a dongle. This is how the EDTracker wireless version communicates with your PC. As you would expect, the build quality of the USB dongle is top-notch, and it looks like a quality product. The wireless version weighs an additional 0.03 kilograms, barely noticeable between the two at all, and in all honesty, without the cable hanging down to one side, it actually feels a bit lighter. Certainly, it does feel less restrictive to me. The only thing noticeable that I don't recall on the wired version is the on-off button. Has a strange action to it. Turning it on is very simple, an easy slide to the left and very smooth, but turning it off requires considerable force. It in no way detracts from the product's capability, but does not feel too good. I'm not sure if this is by design, or perhaps I just have a slightly faulty version. The version that I have here is just for demo purposes, and I will be returning it, so maybe it's just something along those lines. Let me know in the comments section if you have found a similar issue with the on-off switch. Internally, the EDTracker wireless device promotes an uprated 32-bit ARM microcontroller with 8 times the memory and lots more processing power than its predecessor. This means that wireless is just as responsive as the previous wired device. Is it just as responsive? We shall see in a bit. EDTracker Pro wireless devices use 2.4 GHz wireless technology in order to communicate with the USB dongle. It supports 27 different channels, so it can easily coexist with other wireless devices in the vicinity. I have to say, my house is full, absolutely full to the rafters, with wireless devices primarily operating on a 2.4 GHz frequency, and I had absolutely no problem setting it up or using it at all. It's rechargeable with a lithium polymer battery. On the website, they've kind of covered their back in all different kinds of ways there. They're saying at least 10 hours battery lifetime on some pages and up to 10 hours of playtime on other pages. So let's say around 10 hours of playtime, and to be honest with you, yeah, I'd agree with that. It seems to last an awfully long time. It's charged using a standard USB micro cable. Interestingly, the standard USB micro B cable is not included as part of the package, which is a little bit odd considering the additional price that you pay and the relatively low cost of a USB cable. That being said, that the USB cable that they provide with the wired version is of a very high quality. I'm uncertain, I'm afraid to say, whether or not you can use the device whilst it's plugged in, so effectively turning it into a wired device. I assume that you can because the technology is the same, but I cannot say definitively because I don't have a high quality long enough USB cable to test. So apologies for that. The device also has an auto sleep mode. This is something that will come into play every I think it's 3 to 5 minutes, and it's there basically to retain battery life. It charges within a couple of hours, and it is safe to leave it plugged in forever. So this is a highly safe device. You might see many third-party sort of head tracking devices which recommend you don't leave it plugged in and for any extended period of time without keeping a close eye on it. That is not the case with the EDTracker Pro. Honestly, these guys are building these things to a very high standard. Calibration is exactly the same, well, it's the exact same approach as it was for the wired version. You download the same app, which has now been updated, incidentally, and also this app will manage firmware updates in the future, and I believe there is a firmware update already planned for the wireless Pro version, so that should be coming out pretty soon, guys, and initial reports suggest that it makes it even more responsive, a much better bit of kit, which is interesting because I think this is fantastic already. So for it to be even better than it is now, quite an impressive boast there from EDTracker. So we'll see how well the firmware. Unfortunately, I won't be able to test the firmware updates because by the time the updates are released, I will have had to have sent this one back. But the quality of the devices that these guys are putting out, I highly suspect it's going to be a faultless first time, no problems kind of scenario. And if you do have problems, they've got support guys there, and they're really helpful. So I wouldn't worry about it too much on that front. All EDTrackers use a bespoke single application. This is specifically designed around the EDTracker. The device is driverless, which means that there are no Windows drivers required. You just plug in the provided USB dongle, pair the device, calibrate it, and play. Or not, as the case may be, but I'll go into that a bit more later. I had a few issues personally when I was trying to set up my calibration. This, I think, is probably due to the fact that I previously installed the wired equivalent, and I don't think I cleared that previous installation off my system properly. What I did do was just right click and restart using the setup wizard right again from the beginning, and that was enough to fix the issues that I was having. You can opt to change the 2.4 GHz bands between one of the 28 default channels. The default is 1. And to be honest with you, on channel 1, I have not had any interference issues whatsoever. Nothing at all. You cannot have two devices running on a PC. I've been told this. I haven't tried it, unfortunately, because I only have the one wireless device. Now, I don't know what it is, but I kind of feel like it is going to be possible somehow. The guys over at EDTracker, far smarter than I am, and they know their stuff. So when they say you cannot, you definitely cannot. I just feel like you can. I feel like there's a possibility. Why would you want two devices running on a single PC? I'll come to that later as well. Don't worry. That being said, you can have a LAN party with multiple devices in the same room. You just need to make sure that your device is being set up with the USB dongle, that they're paired together, and you're not accidentally pairing yourself with your teammate's EDTracker Pro. That could obviously cause some issues in the game, but multiple devices, at least a minimum of 28 devices available to you during a LAN party. And I think actually part of the expected firmware update is to improve the capacity at which you can have multiple devices running at the same time. So all good positive sort of stuff coming from that conversation. Once calibrated, as was the case with the wired variant, the wireless EDTracker is by far the most responsive and accurate and adjustable of all the head tracking options on the market. It is truly staggering how immediate the response is when you move your head. And even in the wireless version, there is absolutely no noticeable latency for me. It is absolutely spot on, really impressive. Now, the distance from the dongle, I don't have a specific tape measured distance, but let me just say this. I have a 15-foot room, and I was able to leave the room before I lost signal. And I say before I lost signal. I don't know if I did lose signal because I couldn't see the flipping monitor from where I was standing, but right up to the point where I couldn't see anything, it was still working. So that's pretty good. I don't know what the definitive distance is away from the monitor, or from the dongle I should say, but I suspect, well, I know for a fact that I could get further away from the PC than I could with the wired device. So, I mean, that alone is probably enough to sort of appease the majority of you out there. Now, I've heard lots of people complaining about the drifting and recentering issue on the previous wired model. I've got to say, well, first of all, this is unfortunately a lone device on a relatively short period of time. It's not that they're being pushy or anything. It's just that I only have a certain amount of time in which to perform my analysis on this device. So I haven't really had long-term usage with an EDTracker Pro. In the future, I hope that will be resolved. But for this particular review, I am limited to how much time, hands-on time, I will have with the device. But I have to say, despite using the wired version and now the wireless Pro version, I've never had an issue with this. During setup, I did momentarily, but as soon as I had calibrated it correctly, I really haven't had any such issue. A quick and simple reset view to center, I find, resolves any minor alignment issues in any case. One issue I did have was with the device's auto turning off feature. Now, this is obviously there to conserve battery life. I found, whilst I was doing my tests and experimentation, that if I was busy setting up buttons or planning something in-game, when I returned to play, I found that the device had disconnected and there was nothing I could do to turn it on again but for removing and replacing the USB dongle, which worked immediately, but just a minor irritation that there wasn't any way of kind of waking it up that I could find. Now, it might be that there is a method by which you can do that, or maybe just my setup caused that to be an issue. Again, if you have a wireless device and you know how to do this properly, or you're not experiencing the same problem that I am, then let me know in the comments section, because, as I say, I only have a limited amount of time to work with this piece of kit. Either way, this is not a deal breaker, but just a minor annoyance that in real gaming situations you probably won't have to deal with all that often, if I'm being totally honest. The biggest issue with EDTracker for me is not actually... There's my daughter, is not actually a problem with the EDTracker itself. As it stands, EDTracker is not fully supported by even the majority of the big name brands. This means that to get EDTracker working properly in the majority of games, I do need to either use a third-party piece of software, which is free, incidentally, or even start editing and manipulating config files. Whilst this is an epic pain in the backside, once configured, the result is considerably better than any of the other wireless head tracking devices I have used to date. Of course, you have to remember that this is a 3DOF and not a 6DOF device, so there are also the limitations surrounding that. However, there are examples of pseudo 6 degrees of freedom, which isn't really 6 degrees of freedom, but I have to say, it does seem to be effective enough in the right areas to actually work really well and pretty much do everything that you would want a 6 degree of freedom device to do, almost. So not a massive issue there. So very quickly, let me just go over the pros and cons. I'll start with the cons. There aren't really that many. It's not directly supported by most games, even the big ones. That is the big issue. And it's a damn shame, because I tell you what, the build quality on the EDTracker Pro is superb. And the response that it gives, it provides such tremendous latency-free responses that I think big games really ought to be taking note of these guys and, you know, accommodating them and maybe just working together with them and making sure that the EDTracker Pro can just be picked up, plugged in and used by any game. It's a real pain in the backside that you have to sort of jump through some hoops and work around some things. Not in every game, incidentally. There are a number of games that I've played where it is just plug and play. You set it up, you know, bind it to whatever you want it to do, and away you go. And in games like that, it works excellently. No issues whatsoever at all. And it's just a shame that some of these big games don't allow that same sort of ease of installation. Again, that is not really the EDTracker that's at fault there. It's these games that don't communicate with it for whatever reason, and I don't know what that reason is. But it would be nice in the future. I think EDTracker is well on to 100,000 devices being sold now, and now that they have a wireless variant, I can only see those numbers increasing. So hopefully big game developers take note of the EDTracker Pro. I'm going to be doing my damnedest to promote the EDTracker Pro devices. I'm not getting any kickback, guys. I don't earn any money off any purchases that you make, but I think it's such a good quality device that it should be made available to all gamers. That's all I'm saying. I've already mentioned 3 degrees of freedom and not 6 degrees. For some of you, that's going to be a deal breaker, but honestly, in the majority of games, it works just about fine. You know, not just about fine, that sounds terrible. It works fine, absolutely fine. And with the pseudo 6 degrees of freedom effect, it does work fine. You can zoom into your dials and look at stuff. It works really well. Honestly, not many people are going to really notice any problems here, I don't think. Price-wise, I have to ask the question. Now, I know they've put a lot of work into this, and it's incredible what they've done. I think it's brilliant. But I do ask the question, are they pricing themselves out of the market? It's TrackIR, for example, for a fully 6 degrees of freedom system is quite a bit cheaper. And that includes the camera and setup and everything. And TrackIR, as you know from my previous review, is a very effective bit of kit as well. It's not as responsive as the EDTracker Pro, but it does work with every single game. It does come with 6 degrees of freedom, and it is cheaper. So I just feel that maybe they're pricing themselves out of the market a little bit. It's down to you whether or not you feel that's the case. I honestly cannot rate this device highly enough, but there are these issues, so it's my job to point them out. It doesn't come with a USB cable. This seems like a minor thing and easy to overcome, but when you're paying this price and the quality is so good, I just think a USB cable ought to be chucked in that box as well. We know you've got them, guys, because you send them out with the Pro device. The Pro wired device, I should say. Incidentally, it appears that they've been focusing so much on the wireless variant that they have very little wired devices left. So for a period of time, you might only be able to buy the wireless variant. I'm not sure. It's really lightweight and it has a really robust design. It is far, far less likely to break than other head tracking designs with their little spindly, sticky out bits. The EDTracker Pro is sensitive to magnets. This means that you can't mount to the side of your earphones near your microphones or your headphones. It can also be used in direct conjunction with other head tracking devices, so you can mix and match them. And this can offer the most realistic biking experience to date. So the EDTracker controls your body movement and a Headtracker controls your head movement. This thing is unbelievably realistic. So if you're a biker and you're into your biking games, this is a device you really want to take into consideration. It changes things like you wouldn't believe. Despite its sensitivity magnets, it can be mounted on other parts of your body. There's a detailed and nicely formatted PDF manual. This will help you through installation, and they've really put some time into that, so it's absolutely spot on. It can be bound to just about anything. In game, it's not limited just to view, like a Headtracker, like TrackIR, for example. It's not just for your view. You can bind it to anything at all. You could attach it to your wrist, and if you want to open the door, you swing your arm. It's really unlimited in terms like that. So yes, something to consider for the future at least. One thing you cannot do is you cannot upgrade your existing EDTracker Pro wired device to become wireless. That's a bit of a shame, but to be honest, not really a negative, just an observation. And there's no build your own variant, which again is not really a negative point, because who the hell else? You wouldn't go to TrackIR and say, hi, I'd like you to send me all the parts to build your device at half the price. They would not do that. So the fact that EDTracker still have that option available to you for the wired variant is pretty impressive, and not really a negative in this sense, I suppose. The pros, let's focus on the pros. This thing is super responsive with absolutely no noticeable latency whatsoever. You don't need a camera, and it's not affected in any way by ambient light conditions. You can sit in the dark, you can sit in the light, you can sit in a house full of mirrors. This thing will still work. It doesn't care at all. This is a quality device that works very well in almost every single game. You might have to work at it, but once you've figured out how to make it works superbly. This is undoubtedly a head tracking device, unique in its approach, but very effective at the same time. It is undoubtedly the most responsive of all head tracking devices I have ever used. The price is high, but so too is the quality and the performance that it gives. One thought I have had for the future is how viable would it be to allow the power on LED to be utilized by a camera. If it were more prominent, sticking out of the device, would it then be possible to track a fully 6 degrees of freedom with a camera? I would love to see how viable that is, and I'll suggest it to the guys at EDTracker and just see whether they think that is something that might work in the future. For me though, the most exciting thing about the EDTracker Pro Wireless is the simple fact that it can be mounted elsewhere on the body and used alongside other head tracking devices. This offers near full body motion tracking. So for you motorbikers out there, you bikers out there, this should be a big consideration. This is something that cannot be accomplished with a normal head tracking device, as it needs to retain line of sight. It can also be mounted at any angle and reset accordingly. I am in discussion with EDTracker at the moment to see how viable it would be to run two EDTracker Pros together. For me, this is the most interesting aspect of the device and something I am looking into with great interest. So keep your eyes open for more on this point in the future. That's it from me. This review is made to assist you and hopefully give you all the information you need to make a decision on whether or not to buy the EDTracker Pro wireless device. If you do buy off the back of this review, then please hit the like button and leave a comment just to say thanks very much and explain that you did. This will only take you a few seconds of your time, but it helps me and it helps the channel considerably. Without you guys, I cannot grow or improve. So thank you so much. I hope you have a good day. Take care of yourselves. Till next time. Bye-bye.